bus. He said he
So
would
let me send you
repeal
that link
the,
so that you
Kathleen
can...
Wynne sex ed curriculum. And then once he got to power, he said, oh, no, that's fine. So he screwed the social conservatives. Then he screwed the fiscal conservatives.
So you can tune in and just mute it in another window.
Speech as leader of the PC party, I think it was at the Canadian Club, was about a Ontario carbon tax. And
I can call it a tax or a levy because that's how they make the distinction.
Oh, I know, but I can tell you, it sucked the oxygen out of the room.
I bet.
It was silent, and then finally somebody from the back went, no. So the PC party realized they had a Frankenstein monster on their hands, and he was going to blow it. And basically, once you throw the social conservatives under the bus, and then the fiscal conservatives under the bus, well, Sheila, there's no more conservatives to throw under the bus. So the PC party, thankfully, threw Patrick Brown under the bus.
Oh, can you tune into...
that Cersei walk of shame down the servants' entrance of
you didn't finish. You said, can you tune into...
building.
Well, for one, it's not live.
Of 2018, January 25th, if memory serves me correct.
But unmute it and see what the sound levels are like.
Testing the sound levels.
It's not a limo. We're
testing the sound levels.
I guess we'll find out.
Testing the sound levels.
It is a salt-stained mini.
I'm a bit quiet. Let me sit a bit straighter.
Brown
Yo, dog. This is Bagel.
Oh my gosh.
He's not dead yet. He's popped up again, and this time
he's come back to murder the conservative.
That sounds a bit better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we sound about the same?
I don't know what his
We'll find out in a moment.
But if there's some kind of cosmic fluke that he prevails,
yep, we're good.
Okay, good.
Destined for defeat. And then I think
not too overpowering of them, but they're not overpowering us either.
Baseball, it's 3 strikes and you're out. 3 dud leaders and you're out. And
yeah,
have to burn
we sound good.
Maybe we can just, when we go, actually, when we make it public, we can just mute these guys as we wait for the real one to come on, and then just talk, just so there's something for people to look at.
Yeah, that can work.
Or, I don't know, like, staring at their Facebook page seems lame. I should put this in another window. Put that over here. OBS here. Make it smaller.
Oh, CBC has it.
CBC has it? Can you send me a link? That would be much better than waiting for Facebook.
Goes live in 8, according to them.
They're probably doing a little pre-show too.
Yeah, they're probably doing a pre-show. So do you have it?
Did you send it to me?
Yeah, send it to Discord.
Okay, maybe that'll be better. Go home. Can you... Oh, okay. I guess it's gonna be little. That's the mini player. That does that.
Oh.
And now I don't know how to fix it.
Press the X.
Oh. Why is it weird?
It's probably off your aspect ratio.
Okay, well, I can work with that, I guess.
What's the deal?
I have to mess with the cropping, so we'll have to apologize.
Scroll this one up a bit. Oh wait, can you not scroll anymore?
I want it to stay scrolled up as far as I can because I'm going to move it down so that all the screen sees is the box. And I don't want to be able to accidentally move it and then not get it back where I want it to be.
What are you trying to do? Oh, okay, never mind.
Filters, that's what I want. Okay. On the left. It was perfect. Top. Like... Whoa, that's too much. It's tedious, but it's good. Ah, why are you being this way? There we go. Okay, that should do it.
Well, let's go then.
Want to make it public? Get rid of that. Keep that up there. Find the other window. Find OBS. Put it here. That's a good spot for it. And we can make it public. All right.
Well, looks like we're live.
Hopefully everything worked.
Hopefully. You never know. I mean, I guess I can listen in for a moment. Yeah.
Yeah, let's check the channel, make sure that it went up.
Oh, I'm watching on YouTube, so it should be good.
Oh yeah, there it is, right there. So should we wait for some people to come in before we start introducing ourselves?
Oh, I'm sure, of course. Not fun introducing ourselves yet.
Yeah. Let's see. Put chat right there.
Mm.
And then hopefully... Oh.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Couldn't find your... Oh. It's because I'm an idiot. That's the problem. Two-step verification is ridiculous. 5, 7. Oh, I can see the stream in the chat. That's silly. Might as well just use the chat in this window here. Oh, we've got a viewer. Oh, I think that was me.
Well,
I think that was because I've tuned in, but hey, let's go for it.
have you tuned in?
Well, it opened it up in another little window.
If you are in fact not one of us, type in chat. Oh.
Is there anybody out there?
Oh, you have we're back to 2. We went down to 1 for a moment.
Oh, look at that. Just in time for the CBC's coverage to almost start, because you would not believe how difficult it is to find someone that's actually streaming this debate.
Yeah, it wasn't the easiest thing in the world. It took a lot longer than I hoped for.
But here we are.
Yeah?
Shall we introduce ourselves?
Yeah, I don't see why not.
They probably recognize you.
Hopefully. So, well, we're here. This is the Great Canadian Bagel here. We have the Conservative leadership race coverage coming to you. We have the first debate here. So we have myself, Chris. I am the main host of the channel, who you might recognize if you've watched me before, or at least recognize my voice, because obviously you've never seen my face, so how would you know who I look like? And with me, we have the lovely Lexie, who's co-hosting for tonight.
Hello. You may know me as the artist of the profile picture for the channel and the thumbnail for the First Past the Post video, as well as the thumbnail for this stream. My illustrious art career has started.
Yep. Next step, art museum?
Oh, I hope not. Those places are terrible.
I mean, you're objectively better than some of the art that gets into those.
A lot of the art that gets into those is money laundering.
No, I don't want to get too much sidetracked.
That's
here.
a little bit sidetracked.
So, this is obviously the first leadership debate coming to us. So there's a lot to be expected here. Now, interestingly, Patrick Brown has refused to go to this debate, and I am rather surprised by that. Typically when you are not the front runner, you're back a bit.
Oh.
You want to actually go to the debates because that's how you can get your name out and people know who you are more. Because, I mean, frankly, Patrick Brown is not really well known outside of Ontario. And from what I've gathered from what commenters have said in the news articles, even in Ontario, he's not extremely popular or well known. So this seems like a really missed opportunity for him to not show up tonight. And as far as I can tell, he was invited.
It kind of reminds me of when Trudeau refused to come to that federal leadership debate in 2019.
Yeah, it'll be really funny if in this one you just see the whole first debate, just everyone just bashing Trudeau in the face. That would be rather funny.
I would imagine that is going to be a lot of a conservative leadership debate, but they need to figure out who's going to bash Trudeau the hardest.
Yeah. I think it's going to be very unlikely to find a conservative leader who's going to stand up for Trudeau in this debate. Mm-hmm. I think there's going to be a lot of easy punches. I think they're going to hesitate against punching each other here because it's difficult and possibly a bad look to punch other conservatives in the face, but punching a completely different person that most conservatives agree is not a good leader of candidates, that's a pretty easy one to punch.
See, but what's going to be the most effective? Because the point of this debate is to figure out who among them is going to lead the Conservatives. So only one of them can win. So they kind of do need to punch each other a little bit.
Well, what if the Conservatives decide to adopt the strategy of the Quebec Solidaire in Quebec, where they have two leaders? I don't know how, why, or when that should work, but they do it.
Is that something that could actually happen? Like, could you end up with just two co-prime ministers?
I don't think there's anything in the Constitution that says you can't, because I'm pretty sure the Prime Minister just serves at the Queen's pleasure.
Fair enough.
So, if the Queen really wanted two advisors, technically yes.
Well, I mean, I feel like from my legal study, if it's not in the Constitution expressly, then it's pretty much fair game.
Yeah.
So I think we should note that we are going to be reading the chat while we're in here. And so if you have any comments or questions for probably Chris, possibly me, probably Chris, if you have anything you want to say and for us to read and for Chris to answer, definitely put it in the chat. We'd love to see it.
Yeah. I think there's going to probably be a good amount of time either before, during, or after. So
do let me know if the audio of the debate is too quiet, because I did turn it down just because there's nothing happening right now.
Yeah, makes sense.
Oh, let's take back Canada, says Easton Care. How much of an opinion do you want to give on that, Chris?
Well, on a scale of 0 to 100, with 100 being, let's take back Canada, and 1 being, no, Canada should be part of the moon, probably sitting at like an 80 to a 90.
Yeah, you have to be a bit more impartial than I do, because I fully agree with that, Easton. I hesitate to say based, but I think you understand the sentiment here. So, do you have any predictions for what kind of issues are going to come up tonight?
I think you're going to see a lot of the main bread and butter issues pop up. We're going to see people go on about probably healthcare, housing, possibly guns, possibly if someone wants to try to use what's going on in the U.S. right now for some cynical political game, maybe abortion will come up, but I can't possibly imagine that being useful or productive given the audience and the membership of the party.
I think if that was going to come up anytime, it would be in a federal debate and not in a conservative party debate.
Yeah. The only thing there might be some people punching at Lewis for that, but I think that would be really bad form and probably unproductive for the whole leadership debate, because typically how these conservative leadership races go is you have really three aisles. You have like the red Tory wing, you have like the center Tories being like the true blue, and then you have the social conservatives. And historically, the social conservatives have been the smaller of the three groups, but they're the most active of the three groups. So you generally want to have them switch their vote to you.
Yeah, so, I am going to say the announcer just said that they're starting in a minute. And I want to put it out there that we are going to be commentating over the debate. So you should be able to hear the debate decently well. But if you want to just listen to what the candidates are saying and not have us talk over them, then I would recommend going to a direct stream, because we are going to be commentating on this.
Yeah.
So Lewis is the most openly anti-abortion candidate on the stage tonight, isn't she?
Yes.
And did she draw her line at sex-selective abortion, or did she full ham it and go all the way?
No, we're Canadians, we're tame. I think it's mostly sex-selective and coerced, which is, I think,
It seems like an open goal, but apparently not. Oh, it looks like we're about to start, so I'm going to turn the debate up a little bit. If you guys think that it's too loud, too quiet, do let us know. We're going to try to keep an eye on it as best we can.
Yes. When in doubt, always make a comment, a chat. The chat is really bumping, so it'll be pretty easy to see you.
Yeah. If you put something in chat, we can pretty much guarantee that we'll see it.
Yep. The power of small streaming.
I think housing is going to be a really huge issue in this debate, mostly because that's Pierre's biggest hammering point lately. And a lot of people have been coming out kind of refuting his takes and all that. And I imagine that Pierre is probably going to dominate this debate a little bit, just because he's got such a powerful stance on pretty much everything. And he's been such a big player. Oh, there's the national anthem. We're probably not going to bother stopping for that, because we're not... We're good. If we were in there, we'd stop, but... Interesting mask distribution in this room.
Yes. I have a suspicion that if you took a poll, the average unmasked versus average masked would have a correlation to basedness.
You know what, though? I bet when we see... Well, there won't be a Liberal leadership debate, but if we were to see one, I bet you wouldn't see a lot of masks in there either.
No, probably not. There was a Ontario Liberal convention relatively recently, and almost none of them were wearing masks, while at the same time they were saying they wanted to bring back more mask rules.
Were they really?
Yes.
Oh, dear. Oh, but, Ontario.
What can you expect from the bright, the courageous, the liberal establishment? Taking the hard stance of...
Fortunately, the COVID masking issues seem to have largely sunk away. Oh. Mad Beast Yeti says, big policy focus for rural Ontario issue is getting the 2020 gun ban repealed. I would argue that should be a big policy focus for anyone in rural areas of provinces.
I suspect that's going to be one of the biggest things that people are going to hit Charest with, because he came out originally saying he's going to support or not repeal Trudeau's gun ban from 2020, which is a really daft take from someone running for the Conservative leadership race.
And we're kind of running out of time, too, because that grandfathering policy is almost up.
Yeah, they had to recently re-extend the amnesty for 2 years because they couldn't get the bill passed because Trudeau decided to kill his own bill in the middle of the last year's election.
I guess that gives us a little bit more time.
Yeah.
But maybe it's just a pipe dream. I would love to see gun issues come up framed as, like, the freedom argument is obviously important, and it's a big part of gun enthusiasm in general. I don't think that there's enough focus on the fact that guns are also kind of a women's issue. But maybe Lewis could bring that up. I've never heard her say it, but that's just kind of a pipe dream I have in general political debate, because it's a part of the gun issue that doesn't get examined nearly enough.
Building and expanding your network. And to facilitate that, you have a very key piece of technology in your hands. If you've
Oh, they're
not
reading a
already
sponsorship
done so,
from
please follow the
Intuit.
instructions on
Fun.
your tags and
I mean, this is a
download our
private
conference
company, so...
app. Huva.
Oh,
This is
they're
the best way
okay.
to instantly introduce
They're
yourself
advertising an
to
app that they're using for the conference.
hundreds of other people that are
I guess we can keep going since nobody's arguing yet.
It will be... I'm really expecting this debate here is going to basically just get completely dominated by Pierre and Charest, because Lewis, from the last leadership race, has strong opinions, but she's rather soft-spoken and won't really speak up over people or interject very heavily. So I think she's probably going to get talked over a little bit. I'm also expecting... Well, I don't really have much knowledge of Baber or Atkinson, like how they behave, but Atkinson seems a bit more of a thinks that respectfulness is really important, so that typically gets you talked over in how debates work.
That's one way to put it.
Yes. Trying to be nice in a debate gets you talked over.
That's true, yeah. And as frustrating as it can be to listen to everybody screaming over each other, you know, if your opponents are doing it, you have to do it too, and you just have to be the loudest. Unfortunately.
Yeah. I think debates might be on the way out as a political tool because of exactly that issue. I think in the near future, they might go to long-term interviews kind of thing.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Matt Bicietti says, I can respect Charest for being honest and upfront, though, rather than lying and changing course after.
Yes, I will give Charest that. It's refreshing to see a leader actually say what they plan on doing, even if it's unpopular, than saying what is popular and then doing what they want to do anyways. Looking at you, Aaron O'Toole.
We were just talking about Pat Brown doing that exact same thing.
Yeah.
You seemed a little bit happy that he wasn't coming tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like his campaigning so far. He's not campaigning in what I think is a reasonable or honest way. He's really going hard on kind of baseless and useless attacks on Pierre, which I think has no real utility for either talking about issues and hashing out, because keep in mind, one of the purposes of a debate or a leadership race is to hash out how the party should deal with issues of the day. He seems very quiet on that, but he seems really ready to jump in and just punch mostly Poilievre in the face about like these small perceived issues that I don't think are really a big deal, like the 2015 citizenship ceremony Nagab ban proposal, and recently Pierre being a bit too slow to comment on Roe v. Wade possibly being overturned in the U.S., which is the dumbest,
a hilarious issue on its own.
It's just so dumb that people in Canada feel so strongly about something that's happening in a different country that has no effect on us directly.
Something that isn't even a political move, so to say. I know that the U.S. Supreme Court is very politicized, but it's not as if some big referendum passed and they're afraid of that coming to Canada. It's a Supreme Court thing. It's a decision. It's a very strange thing that Canadians are getting so up in arms about it. I realize that a lot of American politics does bleed up here, so like I can't really fault them for paying attention to it, but the amount of focus is kind of insane.
Yeah. So in a way, I'm actually kind of glad he's not here tonight, because I think he'd probably be one of the people to try to invoke abortion as a wedge issue in the debate, which I think would just derail the debate. Because I really don't think anyone in the conservative faction cares, except the cares is the wrong word. I don't think anyone in the conservative faction thinks that is a priority issue.
It's not at the forefront of our problems right now. We have a lot of other things to deal with before we get to that.
There's so many.
Also, it looks like the candidates are about to come out.
Ooh, we'll want to be quiet for their opening spiels at least.
We start with Roman Baber.
Next up, we have the former Premier of Quebec.
Now, Charest has a strange voice. Like, it sounds perfectly normal, but it's like, it's not a voice I would associate with that face.
Also, I'm noticing that the stream on stream is a bit behind yours. So just be aware of that. Oh, there's Pierre.
That's peculiar, but oh well. It is what it is.
Well, it shouldn't affect us too much. I like that they put Pierre in the middle.
Next, we have
like they knew.
I mean, he is the front runner of the race.
For sure.
I presume...
Aitchison, that's how you say it. Okay.
I'm surprised they didn't put Lewis beside him and have it like Aitchison and Baber as like the more quote unquote fringe candidates. I say fringe because they don't have the pre-existing support of the other three, and then have like Pierre in the middle because he has the most support, and then Lewis and Charest on either side.
It's like planning out seating at a dinner party.
Like a pyramid.
It's hilarious.
Thank you very much
there
to
she is.
the candidates for being here. We really appreciate it. And I'll just make a note to the audience that the candidates know very little about what is in store for them tonight. Neither the themes nor the questions were shared with any
This
of
is
the
when they start coming out with
campaigns
random questions
prior.
like,
Only the format
do you
was
think
shared.
Let's get started with
Dark Souls is the best video game of all time?
I'm just reminded of the I think it was the Democrat debate where what was his name? The moderator came out with these incredibly loaded questions. Like kind of like when did you stop beating your wife kind of questions. He'd be like, how do you plan to roll back Trump's racist policies? I wonder if we'll get some of that.
It looks like Baber speaking, so...
About a year and a half ago, I wasn't going to have it anymore, and I made a choice. I wasn't going to continue to inflict collateral harm.
Where is Roman Baber from?
I opposed my government
York.
and was removed from the Ontario Peace
York.
Caucus.
York.
I went on to fight for our kids, for our choice, for our democracy. Standing up for people is something I've done my entire career.
I mean
Because
before
I'm not afraid
Canada.
to say what I believe,
Like, where was he
or to
born?
stand up for what's right. I'm
Because
not
he
your
talked
typical
about being a newcomer
I
in
want to
Canada.
say Ukraine or Russia.
Yeah, okay, sounds something like that.
And I'm not going to sit back and watch the erosion of Canada's
If anyone in the
democracy
chat
and
knows,
Canada's
just
opportunity.
comment it and we can
Thank you
make
so
sure
much
that's
for hosting
correct.
tonight.
All right, not going to stand by and watch the erosion of Canada's
Thank
democracy.
you, Mr. Baber. Mr. Charest, it's your 45 seconds.
Thank you very much, and thank you for hosting us tonight. And I hope this will be an opportunity for us to exchange ideas. And if I'm in this race, you'll know that if there's a common theme throughout my whole life, it has been the idea of Canada. And I have fought at every moment to preserve the unity of this country, whether it's the referendum in Quebec or when I was Premier of Quebec. I look at the country today and I see a country that's way below its potential and badly divided, whether it's separatism in Quebec or Western alienation. We cannot take our country for granted. And the answer is the Conservative Party of Canada. We are the national alternative. We have to live up to that responsibility, to the call of Canadians to be the national Conservative alternative to the Liberal government of Mr. Trudeau. And that's why I'm running, to unite the party so that the party will speak with one voice and one vision. And if you're tired of losing campaigns as we did in 15 and 19 and 21, if you've had enough of handing over power to Trudeau, well then you will want a leader that's going to unite the party and elect a national Conservative government.
I think that was longer than 45 seconds. See, that's a strong opener, but how strong does that hold when a lot of your policies echo liberal policies?
They've lost control of their lives.
Oh, here's Pierre.
Big, bossy government has taken their money and told them what to do, leaving the country desperate and divided. I'm running for Prime Minister to give you back control of your life by making Canada the freest nation on earth. Freedom means You should be free to choose your own medical decisions, free from vaccine mandates imposed on you by the state. Freedom means you control your own money, free from government-induced inflation that has made housing, food, and gas unaffordable. Freedom means expressing yourself without fear, and freedom of the press by defunding the CBC and giving every Canadian the liberty to speak without fear. I'm running to put you back in charge of your life by making Canada the freest nation on earth, and that is exactly what I will do.
I love that he sounds prepared but not robotic. Like, you can tell he's not reading off of something.
Thank you, Mr. Polyev. Mr. Aitchison.
Well, thank you. This is our first gathering since the pandemic began. Of course, our world has changed quite a bit. Has our movement met the challenges of our times? Well, many in this room have put a lot of effort into various causes over the past few years. Has it created an impact? These are questions I'll ask my cabinet to reflect on as we govern. Accountability within our movement will make us better. Our values and our principles are timeless. Communities, families, free speech, freedom of religion, fiscal responsibility. Acting on these principles and debating with respect are the recipe for our movement's success. Our politics are increasingly divided, and we have stopped respecting those we disagree with. As conservatives, we must take inspiration from our principles and apply them to the challenges of today to make the future better for all Canadians. Thank you.
It's funny, you were just talking about his debating with respect outlook.
I told you.
Thank you, Mr. Aitchison. Dr. Lewis.
The fabric of our nation is being torn apart by cancel culture and wokeism. Provinces are threatening to leave our great confederation. Debt is piling up to the tune of $1.2 trillion. National unity is at an all-time low, and many people are traumatized by COVID lockdowns and government mandates. I am running to be a bridge builder, to unite the party and to unite this country. I am running to make sure that business owners will have the confidence to take chances again. We will develop our natural resources while protecting the environment. We will respect freedoms and uphold our Charter of Rights. I am running to make Canada.
Wow, you can. This is a big difference between Lewis's debate outlook in the last debate. She's much more fiery. It looks like she spent the last year and a bit practicing her oratory and like really honing in, because that is much more,
So in this round,
for lack of a better word, like an inspiring opening than she did last leadership race.
It's a much stronger way of speaking.
Yes, a much stronger way of speaking.
It's interesting because part of your reason that you didn't vote for her or that you weren't
2020.
In 2020, yes, was that she wasn't a very good speaker, and you were nervous about her ability to do well in debates. So it seems like she got that memo, and she's been working on it. So that's very impressive.
We will also have some additional debate and rebuttals. So here is a question.
All right, let's hear the first question.
First, it will go to you, Mr. Aitchison. The Conservative Party of Canada has lost the last 3 elections.
Don't remind me.
The party lost in 2021 despite being ahead in the polls. In your view, why did Erin O'Toole lose? Why have the Conservatives lost the last 3 elections? And what will you do to achieve a better strategy?
Oh, that's harsh but fair. Easton Kerr says, I prefer a President Nixon look and speaking style. I'm not so familiar with Nixon's speaking style.
Yeah, I can't say off the top of my head I can really picture that kind of style, but
I know you weren't a fan of Nixon's policies.
That's another topic for another time.
Another topic for... Oh, he wants to respect all views in the party.
We have to work together as a team.
Do we have that many different perspectives in the Conservative Party?
I would say there's 4 internal factions in the party, but I think they have more agreement than disagreement, or else they would be in different tents.
All right, turning to Sheree.
And that's a key question for us as we look out. I mean, look at where we are in the country today. Out of 53 seats in the GTA, we have 4 seats. We have no.
Well, that's the GTA, Sheree. I'm not sure what you're expecting there.
There are 32 Bloc MPs in Quebec. And that begs the question. Why is it that we're not successful? Can we actually...
Maybe you should ask why the Bloc is so popular in Quebec. Could it be that Quebec is feeling ignored by the federal government?
Be able to unite the party, but also run on the conservative values we believe in. Fiscal conservatism.
I worry about this emphasis on uniting the party, because that sounds a lot like compromising in the similar way that Aaron O'Toole tried to do, and we know how that ended up.
Yeah, I suspect, or it feels like Charest is looking at the results of the last elections and not really seeing, to me, what was the root cause of the losses. It wasn't that the Conservatives did bad in the GTA because Conservatives do bad in the GTA. It's because the Conservatives ran too close to the Liberals, so people didn't trust the Conservatives to do those things.
Yeah, they're never going to get Liberal voters, and they're driving away Conservative voters by trying to capture Liberal voters. And I worry that this whole unite the whole party rhetoric that he's talking about is leaning towards that kind of thing, especially considering his policies like carbon tax and other kind of liberal-esque policies that the Conservative Party has been criticized for in the past. Listen to Lewis go.
Laws like the Emergencies Act and undermine the foundations of our democracy. We need to oppose things like digital currency and digital ID. We need to protect our national sovereignty. We need to be
These are strong statements, but they're not really answering the question.
No.
Although I can't falter for that, because that seems to be a theme in political debates. They're asked a question and then they just kind of go off on their own way.
Well, like the...
Mad Beast Yeti says, going after the block boggy man feels dated old. It's a weird focus for sure. I'm not sure why he's so concerned about the block.
No.
I would say that you should take a hint from the block and maybe figure out why Quebecers are so annoyed with the other federal parties.
Yeah, I mean, the bloc at this point is basically acting like the CAQ federally, and maybe there's a lesson to be learned on how the CAQ just managed to come from third place to first place in Quebec in 2 elections.
Well, it seems like
fifth place to first place.
Well, I would say if Quebec seems to be feeling like the other federal parties aren't interested in Quebec, then maybe the federal parties should take note of that. GJL Rocco says, hello, Great Canadian Bagel and his girlfriend. Hello.
Hello.
We're so happy to have you here.
The Conservative Party will stand on principle and will always defend Canadians. And finally, we need to welcome diversity of opinion within our party. That is the true blue-white tent. When we're respectful of one another's opinion.
He's really harping on being respectful of one another.
I mean, he was expelled from the Ontario PC party because he decided, I believe he didn't he opposed lockdown measures, and they kicked him out of the party over it.
Out of the PC party? I shouldn't be surprised. Legit Hack Source 23 says, I know this is not the Ontario election, but my mother was curious why your model was different in the Timmins riding compared to 338. Thanks for the great consistent content. Maybe we'll hear out Pierre's answer and then answer that question, because that's an excellent question. And I'm sure that Chris could go on at length about why his model differs from other models.
Yes.
Secondly, I win because I campaign on our strengths. And our biggest strength right now is that we are the low-tax, low-inflation party that will make your dollar go far enough to buy a home, afford groceries, and fuel up your car.
Maybe I'm biased, but I just love the way Pierre talks.
Track record on taxes and the cost of living. We can't elect someone who has a
Oh, we're going to kick you out the stream then. Out the window you go.
I'm biased, I gotta go.
You gotta open up the trap door with the sharks. But
we're gonna win an election with that message. See, I think Pierre's got a really good angle here, because people aren't interested in these halfway kind of let's cooperate sort of viewpoints from a party. People really resonate with a strong message, and you see that from the Liberals, and that's why they win. But do you want to answer Legit Hack's question?
Get to your question, Legit Hack Source. The 338 and my models are slightly different in how they project, and he tries to... What's the word for it? Like, we also had different data inputs at the time, because his most recent one has some polls that my last one didn't have, and it changes the landscape a bit. I think mine is more responsive to the most recent poll than his is. That there's pros and cons. That's not necessarily better or worse. So
And the message it sent to
I will always say 338 Canada is a good place to look for, and I don't think you should ever look at a single aggregator as take that as gospel, because I can get wrong, he can get it wrong, both of us have gotten things wrong. So there's going to be some discrepancy, especially considering Timmins was very close, it was on the edge. And actually, to provide some spoilers, I think Timmins has now switched back slightly to the NDP right now, but you'll find out more about that on Sunday.
You're getting a little bit of inside baseball. He was actually putting in those poll numbers before we started here. Millennial Gamer says, I'm not a conservative voter, but I look forward to seeing whether or not Pierre can maintain his lead. Remember Peter MacKay. We know Peter MacKay very well because he's from out here.
Yeah. I don't think Peter MacKay's lead was as real as Poilievre's was.
I think Poilievre just gets better energy, because energizing the voter base is extremely important in this election, because especially conservative voters are feeling very disenfranchised right now.
Yeah, I think MacKay was basically, he was the only one anyone who knew, but then as soon as they got to know everyone else, it was different, whereas Poilievre has a bunch of voters who support him because they really like him. It's not because he's well known, it's because they like what he says and does, whereas MacKay was just well known.
At the risk of sounding edgy, he's got a bit of Trump energy, where people like to listen to him, and he personally energizes them. GJL Rocco says Jean Charest is a liberal behind a conservative jacket. Yeah, I'm not going to dispute that.
He's definitely a very solid red Tory, if nothing else. Possibly a blue liberal.
Thing is, that's not going to win you an election against Justin Trudeau,
No,
because
I don't think it will.
if people like liberal policies, they're just going to vote for liberals.
They're not going to trust a conservative to do the liberal thing. Like, the prime example is gun control. You're never going to trust the person leading the Conservative Party to do gun control. So doing anything compromising on gun control doesn't make sense.
Hang on, sorry. Lewis is...
Actually, that is not true, Madam Lewis.
Oh.
You did not even go to the trucker protest. You actually went and you took a picture in your neighborhood at a local...
This is not the competition I was expecting. I was not expecting Pierre versus Lewis.
No.
She's mad. Did he not go to the trucker protest?
I
I know
thought
he
he did,
spoke
but
very strongly in support of it.
I thought he did, but I'm not from Ottawa. Thank Christ.
Matt B. Sadie says Pierre talks like a winner, exactly, and that's why I love him. Bumple Gumple says, do you think if Pierre wins that the existence of the PPC will become unneeded in voters' eyes? What a coincidence, you were talking about this before we started stream.
Yeah, I don't think the PPC will survive with Pierre as leader. It might come back if he wins and ceases to be leader, it might come back. But while he's the leader, I don't know if it will, because he kind of taps into the populist disaffected energy that the PPC jives with. Like, the PPC has all sorts of issues and takes, it's more libertarian among other things than the Conservative Party. But the main energy of the PPC is the disaffected, dissatisfied voter. And Pierre just eats all that energy up.
Oh yeah, I would agree, and I would say that it's not necessarily a bad thing if the PPC becomes unneeded, because if those disenfranchised people are starting to feel represented by a federal party with no offense to the PPC, but an actual chance of winning, I think that's a good thing, and I think that the PPC would consider that a bit of a win, or at least the people involved in it. I'm just going to call you Rocco, is that okay? Because my dyslexia is really getting me with your name as much as I like it. He says, I'm for Pierre. I think he will bring back the freedoms to the people, also fixing the economy. I'm allowed to be a bit more biased than Chris is, so I'm going to say I'm also for Pierre, and I'm a really big fan of his whole you can spend your money more than the government, or better than the government can rhetoric, because I share that opinion very strongly. So I'm very excited to see Pierre run. And I know we're talking over him, but I am excited to see how he performs in this debate. Oh, personalized questions. Perfect.
These will be interesting to hear more on. Let's keep it a little down for these to see what these personal questions are. Because some of these questions are kind of like generic nonsense, but some of these are more interesting than others.
Oh, trucker convoy question.
You've been criticized for your support for the trucker convoy. One of your fellow candidates has even said you should be disqualified for leadership of the party based on your engagement with the convoy. As we all know,
who said that?
On the trucker convoy is
was that Charest that said that?
The
Oh,
government
I
and
remember
mainstream
now.
media have gone to great lengths to vilify the truckers. And back in February, you said that you were, quote, proud of them.
That's right.
Has your
That's
opinion
right.
on the
Ah.
trucker convoy changed since? And is your support of the truckers a liability moving forward?
No.
That's a good question.
My position has not changed. I said at the very outset before they even arrived that I simultaneously stood with the law-abiding and peaceful truckers who were fighting for their livelihoods and liberties while condemning any individual who breaks the law, blocks critical infrastructure, or behaves badly.
Thing is, that's not even a hot take.
No.
Now,
Frankly, that's a cold take. It's like the. Do you guys remember back when there was the ice bucket challenge?
Oh my gosh.
It's like the ice bucket
Oh,
challenge.
oh, he's calling out Sheree. Hang on.
He believes that I should be censored. He believes I should be canceled from this leadership race and disqualified, in his words, because I don't share his liberal viewpoint. That is the kind of cancel culture and censorship you would expect from Justin Trudeau, but instead we're getting it from this liberal on this stage.
Oh! Oh, I can't even say he's wrong.
It's a little bit rich, given that your party, your Liberal Party, took $500,000 of illegal donations when you were the head of that party. The average trucker has more integrity in his pinky finger than you had in your entire scandal plan.
This is much more entertaining than the last round of
love
debates.
it. I didn't expect it to be this bloodthirsty this fast.
It's like they came on stage with rifles and started shooting each other.
Oh, I love it.
The working class has been demolished in this country over the last couple of years. We don't need elites who've been able to rely on special contracts with Huawei to look down on them and call them criminals. Instead, we need to stand up for the people who are struggling and give them hope for the future, and that's what I will do.
Legit Hacksource says great answer. That is a great answer. I love it. Maybe it's just because politicians never do this, but I love it when they actually stand with their convictions and they just give the Chad yes. That's what we need more of. And that's why people are so energized by Pierre, and that's why they like him so much.
Yeah.
It feels good to be unapologetic. That was Derek Sloan's attraction for a while until he kind of went crazy.
Yes, Matt B said eat knives are definitely out.
Knives are definitely
There might be a dead body by the end of this one at the rate it's going.
I mean, that's what you want to see in a debate, isn't it?
Well, it's going to make the voting ticket easier if some people die.
And what do you say to the large number of conservatives and Canadians who simply don't want to have a debate about abortion?
They did bring up abortion.
Very important that in a free
Probably because she's been
democratic
so out about it.
society, we are free to debate any issue. And I tell people I am pro-life. Many of my friends are pro-choice.
See, Lewis does have some of that unapologetic Chad energy, but she doesn't have the momentum that Pierre has. And she's
No.
kind of focusing on the wrong issues. Like, abortion is important, but it's not a forefront issue in Canada right now. It just isn't. It's
No,
not
there's
not
not
important the way it is in the States
There's
right
not
now.
the political energy or momentum for the status quo to it to change, so focusing on it's not necessarily a misplay by a social conservative candidate. It's just not likely going to go anywhere.
It's just not going to get you a lot of... It might get you coverage from, like, some liberal outlets, but they're not going to mind so much because if you're not... You need to focus on something that's affecting people right now to get some momentum. And Pierre's focus on the truckers, housing, COVID measures, you know, that's inflation especially, that's hitting people right now.
It's interesting to see that every single person seems to be aiming at Pierre, except Pierre.
I think it's because they know that he's the big fish in the room.
He does have, as of last round of polls, the majority of support.
He's
so
the biggest threat to everybody in there, so they're not going to waste time on each other.
Physically, nobody else can win unless he loses support.
That's reassuring. I think as well, a lot of these debates, because, you know, the other candidates have to realize that their chances are small. But I think a lot of the point of these debates is not just to win this debate, but it's to build your rapport for the next debate. You know, the next leadership race. Rocco says, if the Conservatives vote for Jean Charest for the leader of the party and he loses the next election, you think the Conservative could break up and the People's Party get a lot more votes? I think that is something that you mentioned.
Yeah, if Charest wins and doesn't win an election, I think the Conservative Party might actually just crack in half.
They might just die.
But if you... It'd be like the 90s where the Reform Party broke off of the PCs. I think that would happen again, but instead of the Reform Party, it'd probably be the People's Party, since that already exists as a seed to congeal around.
So half of the Conservative Party would default to the PPC?
More than half, because it would be most of the West, probably.
Do you think the rest of the broken Conservative Party might get absorbed by the Liberals?
No.
No?
The PCs didn't get absorbed by the Liberals. I don't think it would
Maybe
happen
they'll
again.
get absorbed by the PCs.
Their ability to put food on the table and their personal healthcare choice. Can we not speak about the underlying issue? And here's another thing. I think Canadians are counting on us to do better. I have respect for every single candidate on the stage.
God bless you, Baber.
Even John, who can't get my name right. But
Even Sean, who can't get my name right.
I think that every single one of you would make a better prime minister than Justin Trudeau, that's for sure. And second of all,
Do you think that's true? Do you think that any single one of them would make a better PM than Trudeau?
Yeah, because Charest, through all of his faults, I think at least understands how the economy works. So he would run the economy better than Trudeau objectively. Like, I can't even see him doing worse than that. He might not be strong on some issues that I want him to be strong on, but I think he would do a better job than Trudeau.
Thing is, that's such a low bar.
I mean, sometimes your bar is like a pole vault bar, and sometimes it's a line on the ground that you just step over.
Oh, the moderator just called him a liberal. Oh.
Savage moderator is savage.
And Roman, thank you for your comments. And Leslyn, I have a deep respect for the position that you hold.
Hacksaw says, what years do you think Jean Charest will run for the NDP, Green, and Rhino Party? He's making his way around, isn't he?
Who call themselves social conservatives. And I'm not a hyphenated conservative.
Just call me Rocco because the first 3 letters are the real first letters of my full name. Also, 97 is the year I was born in. That's the same for Chris. Look at that. I will call you Rocco then.
Pretty good people to me. And they are part of our family, and they will always.
Matt B. City, I think you might be right. I have a suspicion Charest doesn't actually think he's going to win. I think he just wanted to get in the spotlight once more, because he's getting up there. He's like 63, I think.
He does look like he's having a good time. Like, maybe he really is party surfing.
He's just having a fun time. He's coming here. It's like a roast. Like, you know how some people go to, like, you go to a place and get roasted? I feel like that's just Charest right now.
I'm gonna roll up. I'm gonna beat on Pierre a bit, and I'm gonna have a good time. That's Charest's outlook right now. Chris, what's it like being literally 50? I can't even see.
Wow.
I don't know why you're
calls
saying
me
that.
like 80 all the time, so at least that's an improvement.
Yeah, I don't know why you're saying that, but I can't disagree. I'm interested to hear your reasoning, Bumple. I want to hear it because I have my own theories.
During the Great Recession, the credit rating agency says one of the key decisions for us having a better performance, more jobs, more economic growth.
PF says, Charest's a political beast. He does what's good for him. I don't know he would be any better than Trudeau, and seeing him be pushed by the CBC makes my stomach turn. That's fair. And if the CBC is pushing something that does make your eyebrows raise a little bit.
That is the one thing that I found quite interesting at this race is everybody who's... But to go back to your question, PF, before
You got boomer energy, that's what he's saying.
Wow. But to go back to your question, PF...
Oh, hang on, the debate is angry.
All right, there will be time for rebuttal. Everyone will be given a chance to rebut what has been said.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that. I was too busy laughing at Chris being a boomer. But,
the most boomer zoomer.
I think that CBC is pushing Charest. Here's my, like, tinfoil theory, right?
Tinfoil. Okay, boys, put on your tinfoil hats.
I think the CBC is pushing Charest because they know he wouldn't win against Trudeau. Because he's a little bit too... They're scared... Listen, if you see them bashing anybody, it means that person scares them.
Yeah.
And them bashing Pierre so much means that they realize that Pierre has actual potential to win a federal election, and they're afraid of that, so they want to discredit him as hard as they can. But people are wise to that now. So it's more of an endorsement than a criticism, really.
I think, as well, there, that... Charest is being supported by all sorts of people that, if you think about it on paper, has no vested interest in the Conservative Party doing well. Like a recent one, Tom Mulcair wrote an op-ed in CTV and was saying that Charest would be a better leader for the Conservatives than Poilievre because Poilievre has that Trump energy. And it's like, Why would the former leader of the NDP have the best interests in the Conservative Party in his heart?
Yeah, it's
Like-
very weird when people when people obviously in a different camp are commenting on who would be the best leader for an opposing party. Let's see. Legit Hack says, all my friends say I'm 48 when I'm only 20 because I pay attention to politics and wear colored sweaters. 48. I respect that, legit. You're actually a little bit younger than we are, so keep being a boomer. It's a good place to be, especially when you look at TikTok nowadays and you see what Gen Z looks like.
Ah, yes. When you see what we look like.
I'm not proud. Mabby Yeti says, feels like a very Gen Z chat right now. Maybe. I don't know. Are we Gen Z?
I think we're
Maybe
like that
right on
weird,
the end.
we're that like we're that cusp where it's either we're the Zooms or we're the late millennials. Depends on who you want to define it by.
Alright. They all betray us in the end. The question is by how much. Some guy 527. I wish I didn't agree with you, but Chris sometimes gets concerned for me because I get very black-pilled from time to time, and I have a hard time. I was saying this to him the other night. I have a hard time believing in my head that there is a potential outcome here that actually is a stronger Conservative Party that wins elections and actually does what it says it's going to do. I'm hoping that I'm wrong, and but I can completely understand that sentiment because it's a very disillusioning, is that a word?
Yeah.
It's a very disillusioning time, especially for Conservative voters right now. Rocco says, I think he's addressing me. Oh, he says, Chris's girlfriend is 100% on the CBC picking Jean and attacking Pierre. Yeah, they only... Oh, my name is Lexie. I'm sorry. We introduced ourselves when there was nobody here. My name is Lexie.
I think there was one brave person who started this stream. If you're still here, the first guy,
yeah, good
up.
on you. We had to wait a few minutes to figure out if anyone was there before we introduced ourselves. But if we want to go over it again,
yes.
Chris is the Great Canadian Bagel, the host of the channel. I'm sure you recognize his voice and his opinions. My name is Lexie. I'm his girlfriend. I'm also the artist that made the profile picture for the YouTube channel and the thumbnail for the First Past the Post video, as well as the thumbnail for tonight's stream. So I'm also the first round of review anytime he wants to make a video or anytime he's putting his polls into his model. So I hear a lot of the content before it goes live.
Yeah, she gets the leaks.
I get the leaks.
But unlike the U.S. Supreme Court, is apparently very robust.
Canadians are witnessing the continuous erosion of our democracy. And we should be mindful of this conversation instead of mocking them like the Prime Minister.
Oh, Legit Hack Source wants to know why you chose the name Great Canadian Bagel. That's a great question, because I remember how this happened.
Picking names for things is, like, on the scale of things I'm good at, picking names is just to, like, if a 10 I'm the best, and 1 I'm the worst. Picking names is just above making images. So it took.
So there was a period of probably a couple of weeks that he was trying to figure out what to name this channel, and he kept asking me if I had any ideas, and I didn't because I don't know how to name a polling channel. And one day he's just like, I made a YouTube channel. It's called The Great Canadian Bagel. I was like, how'd you end up on that? He's like, I don't know. I like bagels. I'm Canadian.
Yeah, basically.
My coworker actually told me recently that this is apparently also the name of a deli in, like, Montreal or something. The Great Canadian Bagel.
They used to have a shop here, which is part of the inspiration.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But it closed, so I didn't realize it still existed. But technically, this is not copyright infringement because this is a completely different thing.
That's true. I did learn about that in law school, that copyright, or at least trademark, only really goes as far as the same field that you're working in. But that's a little bit off topic. Oh, he ran in 95. Is having run 25 years ago actually an attractive point nowadays, now that people are so tired of, like, establishment candidates?
Yes, actually, Rocco, I have seen those new polls, and I am planning on doing an update sometime in the near future, because it is a rather shocking one. And actually, I'm going to do a short plug here. I've created a Twitter for my channel where I'm going to post, like, random insights on polls and updates on when videos are coming out and stuff.
And probably memes, like your very first tweet was.
Hey, I guess it's technically a meme.
Polls can be surprisingly memey.
You can follow it at Bagel Polling on Twitter.
Oh, I'm gonna add that to the description of the video. Actually, let me go
That'd be
find
smart.
that.
But basically, the first tweet I put on that was about the most recent Main Street poll, where they found the most interesting result I've ever seen, where the non-binary group has supported the Conservatives 51%, and I'm like, is this trolling? Is this real? Yes, that was an inspiration for why I made a Twitter. I didn't trust the former Twitter, but Musk seems more trustworthy.
I think we were all pretty excited about Musk taking over Twitter, just because Twitter, like, when you ignore the fact that it's a cesspit, it can be kind of fun sometimes, and it would be nice to not get shadow banned. Rocco says, go Boomer, go. Wow, you ran in 95. Damn, you are old, John. Go for you saying your age, and you could remember his age. Good for you, John. Yeah, I think people are more suspicious than... Because I feel like, I've been in politics for however long, used to be a selling point, and I think that's a detriment now, especially since we've seen, Joe Biden down south, having been in Congress for approximately 800 years. Like, people aren't really, at least on the conservative side, people aren't into establishment candidates anymore. They want someone new. And having a bit of a political career, just so you can see how they vote, is helpful, but...
It's not an asset, per se.
Yeah, spending your whole life in politics is not an asset.
I mean, that's why you don't see Pierre going around stumping. It's like, I've been in politics since 2004. No one cares.
Some guy said 25 years ago things made a lot more sense. That's true. Yeah, maybe Sheree had a point back then, but not anymore. Jamie Smith, hi Jamie, says probably very low sample size.
Oh, I apologize. I'm an idiot.
Just okay. Jamie Smith says probably very low sample size means hilarious margin of error. What do you think about that? As for the absolute majority of non-binary conservative voters,
I think the sample size in the poll was supposed to be 20 of actual people polled for the non-binaries. So this margin of error on that would be quite high, but I think 51 is outside of margin of error.
Matt B. Yeti wants to know who is the youngest candidate on stage. He wouldn't be surprised if it's Pierre.
It's either Pierre or Baber.
We can do some research real quick and find that out.
The power of the internet. Let's see. Power move. They're the same age.
Baber and Pierre?
Just about. They're born in the same year.
What year? How old are they?
Both 42.
42? Bumble says, is it just me or does it come across that Canadian politics is a few years behind the trends in most Western nations, especially with an old fart running as a moderate thinking he's relevant? I think that whatever happens in the States affects the entire West at like varying levels of delay. But Canada's a strange, in my opinion, it's a strange amalgamation of we are reactionary to whatever's going on in the States. Whatever the States are doing, we want to do the opposite. And we have a little bit of UK European influence when it comes to centralization of power and general woke stuff. So, yeah, whatever happens in the States affects the entire Western Hemisphere. That's not a question, especially the Anglosphere.
Thanks, legit hack source, for becoming the second and third follower.
He really is hacking.
Breaking the system. But definitely agree, Bumble, that there is Canada, since it has like the left-wing parties of Canada thrive on anti-Americanism. So anything that happens in the US is a culture shock on the entire world, especially countries that are more intertwined with the US. Canada's quite late, though, because all the left-wing parties really push back against any possible change in the US that isn't more left-wing.
I think that a part of that is just that in Canada we have a general lack of a national identity. And, like, the Americans have something that we don't in that they had the revolution to start off of. They have this very unique situation going on, and they have a strong national identity, which Canada doesn't really have. So what we end up having is a contrarian identity, where we are not America. And we are very insistent on that because that's really all we have to go on, and then that results in some seriously toxic political decisions. Oh, journalism.
Right back to the federal government.
Oh, they're talking about CBC, which is hilarious because we're watching CBC's stream of the debate.
By the government. And now the Trudeau government wants to start
Rocco
censoring and
says, I don't
regulating
agree
the
with
internet.
lifelong politician careers. I
think
believe
it's
people can run at the age
appropriate for
of
politicians
median
to
ages
fund
of that
and
time.
regulate
Also,
the
while people can have
journalists
2
whose
terms
job it is to hold them
max
accountable.
with per term 4 years. I assume you mean 2 terms
Canada's
max.
CBC News
What do you
is
think
no
about
longer
his
news.
opinion on that?
It's a communications
Of
audit
a
that
an
Justin
age
Trudeau
limit of, I believe that, do you mean the median age of the time, Rocco?
cover the government. When the government
I'm gonna go ahead assuming that he means, by medium, he means median. So an age cap on how old you can be if you run for prime minister, and a maximum of 2 terms with a per term limit of 4 years. What do you think?
So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to
I think that'd be very difficult to actually get implemented because it would be a very large change to the system. I'm not 100% certain if that would necessarily be the right thing. I'm 100% for term limits, but age limits, I'm not 100% on. Now, I think at a certain point you probably need to throw in cognitive tests or else you get a dead person as your president. But
I would say, so, for an age limit, oh, middle age. He means, so no older than middle age. I would say an age limit, so the main issue with the age limit right now is not that the candidates are old per se, it's that the candidates are political dinosaurs, that they've been in politics forever. Like, Joe Biden's been there since the dark ages, and I think Bernie Sanders has never had a private sector job. He's always been in politics. And even when you're not, in your 80s, having spent your entire life in politics, I think is a major detriment, in my opinion. But we're still coming at the end of a generation that has more trust in people who have been in politics longer because there's this perception that experience breeds capacity in politics, which I would think, in every other job that's true. I think in politics it's the opposite. If you've been in politics forever and not done anything groundbreaking enough to, be president and retire or get kicked out or something like that, I would say that you're probably not the best candidate to be running a country.
now, Legit Hack Source 23, I'm going to just contradict you there. I think actually having a PM for 26 days would be great. They could never do anything bad. They would not be in power long enough to ever make a decision that mattered.
Nothing could ever happen, but nothing could ever get worse.
Yes, nothing could ever get worse.
Will have the power to take down what you post online, remove websites that it considers.
Oh, he was only PM for 26 days because he died, wasn't he?
I think so.
Yeah, okay, that's
Now,
not
it'd be
great.
very concerning if every single PM died after 26 days.
Now, I will say, too, when it comes to age, Ronald Reagan was in his 70s. Trump's up there as well. Like, just because you're an old fart doesn't mean that you can't be a good politician. But it's when you've been in politics for, 60 years and just probably haven't done anything of note that I start to get suspicious. PF says, I agree, to be a leader, you should understand how it is to be a follower. A career in politics has them removed from day-to-day life. Exactly. It gets you extremely out of touch with normal people.
It's very difficult to know. You always see this, oftentimes people who are most against free markets are people who've never actually worked a job in a private sector industry. They've either worked as a bureaucrat or they've been a politician. And especially they've never owned a business. So it's interesting that these people become leaders and advocate for policies about how to run the economy when they've never actually interacted in the economy.
Yeah, I mean, we all like to make fun of Bernie Sanders being a couch surfer, but it's true.
Karl Marx was a couch surfer. His
Is
buddy,
anyone surprised?
he literally lived on the couch of his friend in England. I can't think of his name.
Was it? No, it wasn't Engels.
No, it wasn't Engels.
He was friends with Engels, though, wasn't he?
I think so.
Power often ends up in the hands of those who seek it out. That alone makes them suspect. That's fair.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you should always be suspicious of people in power because power corrupts, and I don't think anyone's immune to that.
There is that age-old quote, absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Well, and the thing is, too, you'll see politicians make a lot of really inexplicable decisions. And Chris has to correct me on this all the time because I'm constantly looking for reasoning beyond just the pursuit of power. But the pursuit of power is a lot of people's only goal. And I think that's part of why you should be suspicious of people who have been in politics forever. Because they are only interested in perpetuating their political career. They don't want to do anything that endangers their political career, and that's how they stay there for so long, when in reality, in order to make important changes in your country, you need to do things that put you in danger. Haxor says, it's kind of why I liked Tim Hudak a couple years back. Not a career politician, prominent in real estate industry, good speaker. Do you know who Tim Hudak is?
No, I don't. The name doesn't mean anything. Was he in the 2017 leadership race?
Was this the Conservative Party leadership race?
I'm asking legit Haxor.
Yeah, tell us who Tim Hudak is. And we'll take a look at him. I'll look him up while the stream delay goes through.
Canadians who are watching us see this choice.
To be fair, Chris and I, although we're fairly politically active now, we haven't been for super long. So our history doesn't go back super far.
The attack dog attacks.
Rocco says, but you see a mid-20s adult just got out of college and run for a seat also. Be there to your deathbed or in their 80s.
A national party able to
yeah.
connect all parts of the
in Ontario, mid-2010s, it was re-election for a seat in Ontario. A kid from Niagara who was 18-year-old and a conservative won that seat. He still held that seat.
American politics into this country. And we should
yeah, if you're too young running for office, I would just question your life experience in general.
Yeah.
You gotta have a good balance.
One of my most controversial opinions on things is I actually think our voting age is too low because people become able to vote, but they have no life experience yet. So,
yeah, Chris thinks that voting should be up to 25 or something.
When I first became able to vote, my political opinions were
garbage.
Very different than that they are now.
They were garbage.
And thankfully I missed the 2015 election, but at that time I would have voted for Trudeau, and now I would not have ever voted for Trudeau. So
Haxor says he was an Ontario PC leader, Tim Hudak.
Interesting. Ontario party leaders are not my knowledge base, except for the current crop.
Oh, I think
being from the Nova Scotia.
I think that might be who Rocco was talking about. Ontario mid-2010s.
No.
No, that's not right. I'm sorry. The chats are coming in a little bit out of order. The more centralized the power, the more damaging the corruption becomes, says some guy. Yeah, exactly. So, okay, corruption is always going to exist in any political system. The only way that you can mitigate the damage that corruption is going to do is by limiting the reach of the federal government. The more it's like a ship. Ships have compartments so that if the ship gets a hole in it, only one compartment will fill up, right? And it's the same thing. The less reach that the government has, the less that it can screw up. And having worked for the government, that's definitely my opinion. I'm generally distrustful of government because I know how horribly inept they can be.
Oh, I've also worked for the government, and it was my most miserable job I've ever worked in my life. They did not know what to do with me one iota.
Rocco says, I think I'm 40 years away. I think I'm in my 40 years away, I think, and talk, however. Oh, Rocco sounds like he's in his 40s, but he's 25. Yeah, you're about the same age as Chris. We're both 24. Well, I'm almost 24.
Yeah, she's a whole several months younger than me.
Yeah,
so
a whole several months. We're actually surprisingly close in age for a lot of couples.
Yeah.
You kind of work for the government. They're kind of corrupt at times. They're kind of corrupt all the time.
My favorite part is the government.
Oh, he also works for the government. Excuse me.
My favorite part when I was in the government is they didn't want to hire any full-time employees, so they kept hiring contractors who got paid twice as much money to do the same job. But at the same time, they had a bunch of employees sitting around doing nothing.
Well,
like myself when I was working there.
That sounds a little bit like the issue in the Nova Scotia healthcare system, which is also a government. Well, it's technically not run by the government, but when you're funded by the government, you're run by the government.
The healthcare system is run by the government. It's run by government bureaucracy.
Oh, there you go. Oh, it's private delivery, quote unquote. But yeah, no, it's just public. Oh, you work for a crown corporation? In my opinion,
I
that's
worked
the government.
literally for a government bureaucracy. So,
yeah.
If it was a private company, that would have been scary.
Yeah. We can't go into who you worked for, but yeah. You work for a crown corp. In my opinion, having talked about this, I don't know if you guys know, I just finished my first year of law school, and having talked about crown corporations, in my opinion, anything that gets its funding from the crown is a government organization. I don't care if it's a crown corporation or how many steps you are removed from government. If your funding comes from the government, you're the government, in my opinion. Rocco says, Chris and I should be drinking buddies and talk about our age 40. You can talk about your sore knees.
Don't even joke about that. They're sore sometimes. Like,
talk about the latest silent films, Rocco, says Bubble.
You really feel old when your doctor tells you need to exercise more because your knees hurt from being stationary. Like, God, what a cold, like, what a black pill there.
Oh, Pierre's touching on a subject I would definitely like to talk about. He's talking about or he mentioned immigrants coming over as doctors and not being able to work as doctors. And you made a good point about this, where you hear a lot of proponents of large-scale immigration talking about how we're getting all these high-skilled workers immigrating. We're getting doctors and scientists and all that. But the thing is, they're really not, because when they get here, it takes almost like 10 years plus sometimes to get your certifications to work as a doctor or a scientist, so you end up driving a taxi all that time.
My grand aunt's late husband was a British doctor who came here in his 60s, and he could not get certified to work in Canada his entire life.
A British doctor.
A British doctor.
To say nothing of someone who comes from India or Bangladesh or some place like that.
If a British doctor can't get certified to be a doctor in Canada, what is the hope of the Syrian doctor coming in who doesn't speak much English? She's never going to get there.
Yeah, and that's... I mean, there's an argument to be made that we should be producing our own doctors, but seeing as that is necessarily delayed, and you do need an immediate solution. If you're going to argue that immigration is good because you're bringing in doctors and scientists, then let them be doctors and scientists. It really shouldn't be that difficult. Legit Hack says, Crime Corp that's funded and regulated by the government is honestly the government. Yeah, I agree. I don't see the difference, and governments do this a lot, where they kind of hold organizations at arm's length to pretend that they're not the government, and Canada is, like, stomach-turningly guilty of that. We are an administrative state from top to bottom. The government's fingers are in absolutely everything, and I didn't realize the extent of the problem until I started law school, but it's honestly mind-blowing, so... It's important to recognize where funding comes from and where control is ultimately coming from. Even if government organizations have a little bit of independence, when you're getting your funding from the government, you're not going to go against them.
No, that's the core problem with the CBC. They are funded entirely by the government, so they're going to support whatever party is going to give them more funding.
Yeah, and say if the CBC Pierre gets elected and the CBC, turns tail completely and becomes a Pierre propaganda machine, I still don't want that.
Well, that itself is a problem. If you have a state media outlet that is just the propaganda piece for who's ever in office, that is a fundamental societal problem that needs to be eviscerated.
Yeah, if you want to be biased, that's fine, but you can't be funded by the federal government at the same time.
News media, it is their privilege to be biased.
Yeah.
They just can't take federal
and I would
dollars.
say, and I don't want what I just said to be construed as like, oh, if they were unbiased, then they should be funded by the federal government. I think that getting funding from the federal government creates bias. I don't care how unbiased you pretend to be. When you're getting funded by the people that it's your job to criticize, it's going to change how you cover things. So I think federal funding for any kind of media is automatic no.
One at a time, please. One at a time. Mr. Polly.
Swampland to sell us in Florida too?
We got some swampland to sell us.
At one point, 50 years ago, someone bought swampland in Florida.
How'd that go?
Then they made Disney World.
It went a little bad for them recently.
Yes.
Some guy says, is anyone discussing what happens when the Queen passes away? Will it change anything? More than one country dropping the monarchy these days.
I don't think it will change anything, because I don't think there is any political willpower to change anything in the Constitution, because our Constitution is so thoroughly screwed up because of Pierre Trudeau forcing the Charter on Quebec without actually waiting for them to agree, that no one has the stomach, nerve, or stick-to-itiveness to actually do anything.
Here's something interesting, actually, some guys. So, you may notice that the Prime Minister of Canada has a really extensive power over Parliament and over the legislative branch in general, as well as the Governor General, who's basically a rubber stamp for the Queen, and that's because the Constitution, the 1860 one, the original one, was designed with the monarchy having more of a role in Canada than they do now. And so since the monarchy doesn't act as a check on the Prime Minister anymore, the Prime Minister of Canada has more power than the President of Russia has in Russia. It's insane. The Prime Minister seat is actually uniquely powerful among parliamentary countries.
Yeah,
I think in the entire world.
I believe it is the most powerful single office on Earth, other than possibly places like Saudi Arabia.
And this is, of course, in proportion to the country that you're controlling. Like, obviously, the Prime Minister of Canada isn't more powerful over the world than Did I say the President of Canada? The Prime Minister of Canada is not more powerful on the world stage than the President of the United States. But if you look at the amount of control that each leader has over their own government, Canada's Prime Minister has more power over his own government than I think any other seat in the world.
But, yeah, to get to you, Mad Beast Yeti, I do think if the British monarchy doesn't... If Charles doesn't abdicate, I think they are done, because no one likes Charles.
Hang on, there's something strange happening.
30 seconds to each of you. Go ahead.
Yeah, listen, Mr. Charest actually brought in the Forerunner law in Quebec to this. He brought in a law to ban women who wear face coverings from receiving any provincial government service. So now that he's here in Ontario, he takes exactly the opposite position and over to pander. It's another example of him flip-flopping. I'm against Bill 21. I have said I was against Bill 21.
I don't know why Bill 21 is a talking point here. It is a provincial issue.
It's literally impossible for the
I think it's a bit of a, I hate to use the word, but I think it's a bit of a purity test.
It is actually a purity test, because there's nothing they can do about it. It's not like you're talking about carbon tax where the feds can do something. The feds literally cannot do anything because it is between the courts in Quebec, because Pierre Trudeau is an absolute dumbass. I mean, he's dead, but he was a dumbass.
Excuse me, I thought we weren't supposed to curse tonight.
I will curse in this one instance. It is my stream. I can break my own rule. But he was an idiot bringing in the charter by adding the notwithstanding clause, because the notwithstanding clause lets you ignore the charter.
Well, the notwithstanding clause was a very important compromise, although I don't know why he bothered compromising.
It was only an important compromise because he
tried to pushed it on Quebec without their permission.
No, because he's tried to introduce a bad charter. Our charter is really weak and doesn't do anything.
Rocco says, you think with higher level of education should be cheaper for students who want to be builders, doctors, and needed positions we need in our economy at that time. I would say, so I'm generally not a huge fan of the government subsidizing students, but if you want to encourage students in a certain field, a subsidy to your tuition is a good way to do that. It's a good incentive to get people into the programs that you want. It is delayed though, so we do have to rely a little bit on immigration, at least in the meantime. And it's frankly ridiculous that people with comparable qualifications can't start practicing in Canada.
Do you think a mixed health
P.S. The government should give money to students.
I presume that says
I imagine he means shouldn't
Yeah.
give money to students. Like I said, I don't usually like funding of students or funding of universities by the government, but I would say that if they want to encourage people to enroll in a certain field, that a subsidy is a good way to do that. I don't think that that's controversial.
Oh, Jamie Smith, the difference between Canada and Britain is that the Queen in Britain actually does exercise her power behind closed doors, but she does exercise her power. And in Britain, there isn't this culture that MPs can't publicly criticize their own party. In Canada, most MPs, as I'm sure Roman Baber can quite tell you quite honestly, as soon as you oppose the line of your party, you're kicked out of the party. So
yeah, you do see a lot more internal criticism in UK politics. Like it's a constant mudslinging fight over there, honestly.
In the case of Australia, I'm not as much of an expert on Australian politics, so that might be an equally powerful position as Canada's Prime Minister. But I don't really have the knowledge to comment too heavily on that.
Okay, Rocco did mean shouldn't, by the way. Yeah, I figured that was what you mean.
I figured. It's an easy typo to
Because
make.
nobody thinks that the government should give money to students for arts degrees.
Let's not fund anything else but arts degrees. Everyone needs to be a women's study major.
Lesbian basket weaving. For
Lesbian basket weaving is the future. Quote that.
Shadow Trooper says, what's up? We claim to be covering the leadership debate. We're kind of just talking over it and answering people's questions.
Sometimes we let them speak.
More nurses and less compliance officers. How about less diversity officers? I actually don't know how big of an issue that is in our healthcare system. I know it's a big issue in the British healthcare system.
Within the framework of the Canada Health Act. That's where we have more.
If there's any comments we missed, by the way, feel free to repeat yourself, because sometimes it's hard to find where we are in the list.
Fixing healthcare in this country, especially with an aging population. I'm going to be having a serious conversation.
Why is our population aging, Roman? Maybe we should talk about that.
Oh, only the biggest, most important issue in Canada that no one wants to address, which is the ever-dropping fertility rate.
Listen, I agree
Why are people having babies? No, we can't talk about it.
Why are people leaving and not having children?
Can't talk about it. Just solve it with immigration, forehead.
He started the stream being like, I can't be biased, I'm a pollster channel. I can't show my hand too much, and here we are. I guess honesty is better than anything. But to be fair,
I'm more
really...
meant I don't want to pick. I don't want to say which candidate I'm supporting too heavily. I can have opinions.
Yeah, fair enough.
I just don't. There's a balancing act.
Rocco says, you think he should do a flat income tax for all, like that great capitalism Milton Friedman said in his life? Capitalist, I assume you mean. Also, how much do you think the government should tax at income? I think no more than 10%. What do you think about a flat income tax rate for everybody?
Depends on what situation you're in. If you're talking about a compromised position from the current status, I think it would probably be fine. If you're talking about the ideal world Canada could be, if, let's say hypothetically, I was given absolute power in Canada and I decided not to be an absolute despot.
All right.
We can't count that out.
No, nobody's immune to that.
I don't think I'd have an income tax if I was the absolute leader of Canada. I'd probably just have sales tax and property tax as tax schemes, and it'd likely be lower tax burden overall.
I would say if you're going to tax something, you should only be able to tax someone's money one time. So you need to choose between sales tax and income tax, or income tax and property tax, etc. But I don't mind the prospect of a flat income tax rate, like a low flat income tax rate, because I think it is important that even low income people, because let's be honest, a lot of low income people get their money back in programs anyway. I don't think that a flat income tax rate would be terrible. I can't speak to the functionality of a flat income tax rate, but I do think it's philosophically important that every voter in the country actually has a stake in the country that they're living in by paying some taxes there. Rocco says that would be scary, you being a PM. People will move to the U.S. Maybe that's the plan. We need property tax because I still need my job.
I mean, property taxes, this gets more philosophical, but I think property tax is one of the more fair taxes because the idea that you can physically own land that no one made or created, just found it and put yourself on it, is kind of strange, but private property is objectively good for the economy and society, so you need to have private property, but to say that you own the property is kind of strange, so property tax kind of makes sense as the society is basically leasing the piece of land to you because it's better to have it in private hands than public hands, if that makes sense.
That's a good way to put it. That's very Lockean of you. It's strange to own something without putting your labor into it.
Yeah.
Let's focus on improving our healthcare system and making sure that we learn something from what
How could we improve our healthcare system, Aitchison? I have some ideas, but I feel like Canadians wouldn't like them. I would love to see a federal conservative talk about axing public health care. It's never going to happen, but I would love to see it.
Yeah, well, if that happens, I'll eat a shoe. I will film it. I'm going to put a caveat on that. If it happens in the next 10 years, I'll eat a shoe.
You think it might happen sometime outside the next 10 years?
Yes.
Wow.
There's a pendulum in politics, right?
Wait, hang on. Why are we talking about Russian oil and gas? Oh, because they're taking this straight out of Pierre's mouth, because he's been talking about increasing Canada's ability to export oil to help relieve Europe's dependency on Russian oil and gas.
Yeah.
So that actually is a pretty good question. I take it back.
His government introduced a
I think people who make under the cost of living should get back what money they pay in income tax with flat tax. The thing is, that's not really a flat tax rate, though, because that's what happens now. You get income tax taken out, and then you just get it back if you're under a certain bracket. So if you're going to have a flat tax rate, you need to have a flat tax rate that you're not actually getting back. Otherwise, it's not a flat tax rate.
Yeah, tax policies, in reality, is always going to be a bunch of compromise positions. It's very difficult. Like, on paper, in your frictionless vacuum with spherical cows, you can have, like, this perfect architected system that ideologically fits your heart's desire so well, but in practice, especially since barring absolute dictatorship, you're going to have some other party eventually get into power and do other things. All you can do is hope to have a compromise position.
Well, Jithak says, that's why I hate Trudeau's idea of fixing the housing market. He says build housing and not houses. That's a good distinction. He doesn't want people to own property. He'd rather people rent from the government-run housing units. That's an excellent point. And I think you're absolutely correct, and that's actually a really scary prospect.
I mean, all I'm going to say on this is World Economic Forum.
Well, isn't that an issue with BlackRock in the States right now, that they're buying up a ton of property to kind of create a, I'm quoting from a certain podcaster here, but a perpetual class of renters. That's a very good point, though. I didn't actually pick up on that, Hack Source, but I'm definitely going to pay more attention when he talks about housing now to that wording, because I don't think that anything Trudeau says is an accident.
I would not be surprised if his goal is to drive people out of owning actual pieces of property and houses, because all of his policies right now actually stoke the housing market more. He's basically just letting people borrow more money and have more cheap capital.
Well, you know what it is, too? He's always talking about investing in housing instead of just removing regulations and allowing people to build houses of their own accord, because they will. They will build them if you take regulation away. But when you're talking about, like, government investing in these sorts of things, that isn't probably what it's going to end up being, is government housing units and renters. That's frightening. I didn't think about it that way, but that's a very good point, Hack Source.
I will say again, I'm not going to go into too much detail because I'm pretty sure YouTube will just delete the stream.
Do you think they're paying attention to a stream this small?
Maybe. YouTube has very censorious policies.
Because they know that small channels can be bullied easier.
I'll say it once again. World Economic Forum.
So that oil can displace all of the overseas oil that we're bringing by tanker.
The fact that Pierre has to push so hard for pipelines in Canada is kind of wild.
Well, think about it this way, right? Nord Stream 2 is a critical pipeline for the Russian economy. Keystone XL wasn't a big deal and we can cancel it just fine.
Rocco says, I think we should open up the north to get rich resources and can get the control of your parts in the Arctic before Russians get full control of that. What do both of you think?
Yes.
So opening up the north
Chad,
and
yes.
Getting the oil? Yeah, I'm not against that at all. The main issue you're going to face is... I'm not even going to say native groups, because often it's people protesting on behalf of native groups, because a lot of native groups are very much in favor of development.
Most natives in the west of Canada want development projects because it's literally the only way a remote community can have prosperity is to produce something, and the easiest way to produce something if you have no money is to take things out of the ground, get money for those things, and then use that money to actually create wealth.
Resource extraction is extremely lucrative as well, but as far as you're talking about getting control of our parts of the Arctic, well, isn't that part of the whole debacle with the F-35s?
Yes.
Where Trudeau seemed to think that you didn't need stealth aircraft to patrol the Arctic?
We don't need stealth planes because we're not attacking, ignoring the fact that airplanes don't defend, airplanes always attack. They're like they're literally cavalry in the air. That's why airplane pilots and cavalry use very similar terms like mounting up.
I will say, though, here's the thing. If Canadian politicians are going to keep harping on about Russia, then they need to make a move to secure the Arctic.
Yes.
Because there is no way that if Russia actually wants to make a move on the United States, there's no way they're not just going to march north until they get around the top of the world into Canada.
The other thing, too, is there was this great proposal that came out, I think in 2019, before the pandemic, that a U.S. company wanted to build a railroad from Fort McMurray to port in Alaska to export oil. And it was going to go up through the Yukon, and it was probably going to be a huge ability to increase resource production in places like the Yukon. And Trudeau was talking about canceling it.
Oh, good. Trudeau's... I assume it's like climate protectionism, this angle that he takes, but I really don't understand the end goal of restricting Canadian development so hard. Like, the Trans-Canada Highway couldn't have been built today.
I don't know.
Let's see.
Yeah, no, it couldn't.
Legit Hack Source says, I believe he said in a speech, federal government plans on funding millions to municipalities to build housing and didn't specify single-family detached homes. Yeah, you're probably right. That is something I completely overlooked.
The important thing to recognize with this, which you're probably aware of actually, is progressives would prefer everyone live as sardines in boxes in a city, because it's quote-unquote good for the environment, and maybe it is,
I highly doubt that.
I don't know about the numbers on that, but it's not human. People do not do well when they're in super high population densities. That's why you see cities have almost all of the violent crime.
Well, actually, this is a theory of mine as to why cities are so much more like progressive liberal on that side of the aisle. It's because a lot of progressive like liberal party, mind you, not like philosophically liberal, but a lot of their policies like to expand, they like to put forward government solutions to problems. So like, is there a problem? Make a law to fix it instead of, social solutions to problems. And that is a very city-urban mindset. So for example, if your neighbor in your apartment building is being noisy, you probably don't personally know your neighbor. And you're not going to go over and have a chat with them about being quieter, at 3 in the morning. You're going to worry about noise complaint laws to control other people for you. Partly because you have no relationship with the people that you want, whose behavior you want to affect, and partly because you don't know. I completely lost my train of thought. Oh my goodness. You have no personal relationship with them, so you have no need to go over and solve your problems amicably. And because you don't know them, you have no real power to control them either. And because you're packed so close together, you need to be able to control other people's behavior. In a rural area, if you don't need to control your neighbor's behavior because what they do over there doesn't really affect you. But when you're in a sardine can, it really does. So urban environments do create left-wing voters, in my opinion.
Rocco, I also definitely agree that 30, 40 years from now, when people are, what's the word for it? 30, 40 years from now, when all the current crop of people are dead or in retirement homes, Trudeau is going to be in history books as a very bad politician. He's going to be like the Jimmy Carter of Canada.
So, as for this little chat back and forth happening about why rent 100 square feet when you can own 0.5 acres, we're sitting in a house in a rural area right now, and we actually have some land purchased in a rural area that we're going to work on, which is funny because when we first met, Chris was really not in favor of that. He was very attached to living in the suburbs and being 10 minutes away from everything, but the amount of freedom that you get in a rural area makes the work that you put into your property worth it, and the work that you put into your property is really fulfilling. When you own something and you can develop it and you know that you're increasing the value of that thing because you've put your work into it instead of just renting a place and hoping that it lasts the amount of time that you're renting, it's very fulfilling, and it's not as much work as you probably think. Rocco says, I think you're older than Chris and I. I'm not sure who you're talking to, Rocco.
I know what it's like to
I think you might be talking to someone else in chat. Some guy says, fun fact, Canada has no ground-based air defenses, don't we? I guess we've never really been concerned about being attacked from the air.
The only ground-based air defense that I think Canada has ever owned was the Centurion Marksman, and I don't know if we still have them in service.
Rocco, if you're talking to me, I am 23. I'm going to be 24 in a couple of days, so if that helps you, power to you. Chris and I are very close in age. And as for how much land we own, I think it's almost 2 acres.
I think it's 1.6.
Yeah, it's a little bit bigger than the land I live on now, but it's next to someone we know. It's a good spot, and we're very excited about it. If we ever start developing it, which we meant to this winter, and we just never did.
The big catch on building anything in the current age is there's a several-year wait list for developers because housing crisis.
Yeah.
Even if you build your own home, still hit by it because all developers are like, let's just build homes.
There was also this very interesting phenomenon of Canada having a lumber shortage.
Yes, because whenever they tried to, it happened in Nova Scotia recently. The last provincial government tried to give crown land leases to a logging company, and people were protesting it.
Move on to the next question, which is
We have so many trees. Trees are everywhere. You can look at the house, like your house in Nova Scotia, throw a rock, and you will hit 5,000 trees.
Oh, Rocco says he's joking because I lost my place in my mind when I was talking.
Yeah, she had her Joe Biden moment there.
Listen, I have a lot of dementia moments. I lose track of myself a lot, so it's just because I've got the debate playing in my ear at the same time I'm talking, and I have a very hard time paying attention to two things at once. Haxor says, I guess my opinion is a little off because I live in the suburbs and I'm still 5 minutes away from everything, perks of living in a small city. That was exactly Chris's position like 6 years ago. And it just takes experiencing how nice it is to be away from the city to kind of change your mind.
Say that I don't necessarily think rural areas are for everybody, but I don't think places like downtown Toronto are really good for people. Or I lived in Ottawa for a bit when I worked at the government. At the yet to be named bureaucracy that I will not name.
You make it sound more suspicious when you
I like doing that. It's more fun.
Okay.
But it is extremely dehumanizing living in a super dense urban area like that because you don't know anyone around you. You don't know any of your neighbors. Don't know any one of your roommates. Don't know anybody.
You don't know the prostitutes soliciting you on the street.
No, you don't. They're there. They're like, hey, do you want to take me home tonight?
You don't know who got stabbed outside your window in the middle of the night.
You still don't know that either.
These are real stories, by the way.
And then you get to your place of work, and then there's people staring at you as you walk across the street because they know where you're walking to, and you're like, are you going to kidnap me later? It's dehumanizing. It's not a fun place to live.
Rocco says his father's a civil planner in King City, Ontario, and he has to deal with all the red tape from the government. I don't even want to think about what that must be like.
Oh, my father has to deal with some red tape. He works at a telecom company, and you would be shocked how much red tape there is with telecom companies doing literally anything.
There's red tape with everything everywhere. It's insane.
It's mind-boggling.
Well, it wasn't, maybe I'm thinking of something different, but
I work presently I work at a company that contracts with the government. It's a defense company. And the amount of random government going and be like, no, we want this instead. It delays the project so often.
Yeah, red tape is generally...
Same question to you.
I think well, bureaucracy kind of begets bureaucracy. They just have a tendency to bloat like cancer cells. And I'm sorry, that sounds so mean, but anyone who's worked for a bureaucracy understands what I mean.
Well, the problem isn't, like, bureaucracies are just fundamentally problematic for running something because it's not because people in them are bad. It's not because the intention behind them is bad. It's just that they're not responsive to any force. They have no objective criteria to determine if they're doing a good job.
Yeah, when you don't have a profit incentive, it really grinds productivity to a halt, and that's where you get a lot of red tape.
I agree with the profit incentive, but it's one of those things. It's like it's not even the fact that it has to be profit incentive. There has to be some incentive, and there is none in any bureaucracy ever used.
Well, you know what? That's a common problem among monopolies in general, which is always why I find it funny when people denounce monopolies and then want the government to run everything because the government is the biggest monopoly that there is. And that's a problem that you get anytime that there is no competition in any field because there's no reason to do better and you end up grinding to a halt.
That's actually why federal systems are quite good because you look at like the U.S. like we'll just pick on abortion because it's a hot topic in the U.S. right now. If you are really pro one side or the other, assuming Roe v. Wade is overturned, you can just go to the state that does that, and then you're good.
Yeah, you can
so you kind of have a free market of government in that regard.
Yeah, you can go to California if you want to and get abortion up to the point of birth. You can go to Utah and have it banned completely. It's up to you. And I really appreciate that. I like that there is an option somewhere for everybody, and you can freely move between those places. And then the ones that make bad decisions can quietly die and not affect anybody except the people who like that stuff, and vice versa.
I think Canada needs more of that, frankly.
He makes pretty good money, however, he puts almost 60 to 70 hours of work per week. The plans he has will take at least 5 to 10 years to get approval, and will take 10 to 25 years to everything is done with approval. Oh, I don't even want to think about that, man, because I know how true it is. Oh. That's the thing. People always talk about all the good money that you make in government, and then it's just at the cost of your soul. Because I made good money when I worked for the government. I quit my government job to get a job that paid much less. And I'm a lot happier for it just because the disorganization, which is a lot of that problem, it's soul-sucking.
We're a wonderful country coast to coast, and we need to welcome everyone into the national conversation.
Thank you, Mr.
Oh, these are
Backer.
closing statements, I
Yeah.
think.
Over to you, Dr. Lewis.
We talked over the whole debate.
We need to
Well-
respect the
Well,
various
I'm glad that we
regions
had
of our
you guys with
country.
us in the chat.
We look
It's
at
been really
in a
fun
province
answering your
like
questions.
Alberta,
Hmm.
we have
We're not quite
implemented
done yet.
laws
We can
that
stay
have
for a little longer.
Yeah.
their economy. Bill C-48,
Hopefully, with
Bill
more
C-69
practice at this, we'll
actually
get a better
favors
balance here. But
foreign
as the first
companies
time we've ever
over
done this,
Canadian companies. We need to
Yeah,
make
and I'd be
sure that we
interested to
stop
know
what
if
was
you
stopped
guys are
disrespecting
interested in
certain
getting more
regions,
live content like
even
this
in the
or more
Atlantic
two-person
region.
content.
The
Did you
development
enjoy
of
me
their
being here? Would you
natural
rather just talk to Chris?
resources
Either way's
are
up to you.
being inhibited by national laws. And
I like
we
the
need to
hours of a. Oh
make
yeah,
sure
government
that
jobs are
each
very
region
attractive if you don't
comes
mind
together
working in a
and their
disorganized
strengths
work environment.
out to bring prosperity
So long
to
as a
our
government
nation.
department exists to address a problem, it's incentivized not to solve it. That's a very good point. Because as soon as you solve a problem, your job goes away. Do you? Some guy, I heard a very similar thing on the Lotus Eaters podcast recently, so I'm wondering if you listen to that podcast too. Hi, new chatter, says Polyev is the only logical candidate. I will never vote for another PC, especially Charest. Charest should not even be on the same stage. He fracked up Quebec, so imagine what he will do to the PC. Charest is Trudeau's bitch. Do you have a comment on that?
I wasn't really paying too much to, first off, anywhere politics, but especially Quebec when Charest was in Premier, so I only read the second-hand accounts of Charest's time as Premier, and he did not seem like he did it the best job in the world. I'm not even going to say he did, like...
Mr. Polyev, Mr. Aitchison, you have 30 seconds.
Especially the things that ended up killing his term, the crackdown on the student protest, that was pretty harsh.
Wait, was that him?
Yeah.
Oh, rough. Some guy says he does watch the Lotus Eaters, nice, but he got that from Yes Minister. Fair enough. Rocca says, look at the development part of this build. He's the second man that apart just behind the owner of that land. How do you think... I'm sorry, Rocco, I don't completely understand what you mean there. I think your autocorrect might be getting to you.
That kills me all the time.
It does happen to you all the time. He sends me some stuff that doesn't even look like English sometimes. Legit Hack says, yes, more live content, please. Excellent feedback. We're glad to hear it.
Word to you, Mr. Shred.
I say we like I run this channel. I really don't. I'm just a guest.
She's a talkative person, which is nice.
Yeah.
It's not good when your co-host doesn't speak. I've watched some podcasts where the co-hosts don't speak very often. It's like, why are you there? Or even better, they bring a guest on and the guest doesn't want to speak.
Rocco says, you both are white. Stay please. You are the only one on YouTube who's talking about this stuff.
Yeah, there seems to be a critical shortage of Canadian commentary on Canadian issues.
Oh my gosh, it's incredibly difficult to find. And thank you, by the way, for the compliment, Rocco. But, yeah, like, I'm a fan, like I said, of the Lotus Eaters, and they touch on Canada every now and then. And while the trucker protests were going on, I was living my best life because everyone was talking about Canada. And I was ashamed because of why they were talking about Canada. But it was so cool to have so many commentators talking about Canadian issues because you never get to hear about that. And then you realize how attention-starved Canadians are, never getting talked about. Some guy says better than Timcast any day. Well, we don't have someone talking about graphene all the time.
If you want, I could drag in some random person off, some hobo, and just give him a primer on graphene, and we could recreate that experience for you here.
Oh, I've had some rants about Ian lately. I just started watching Timcast, and I had to take a break because Ian bothers me so much.
And every Canadian is being part of the Conservative family.
Oh, the Conservative family. Do you feel like you're part of the Conservative family, Chris?
Thank you all for your responses. It's now time for closing.
I feel like they don't like me very much.
Oh, now they're on closing statements. Okay. Please, no graphene hobos, please. That guy, like, God bless Tim for keeping him on there, but I don't know why they keep him.
My gut feeling is they have him there just to add conflict to the stream, or else it would just be like, right now, it'd just be like Tim and Seamus, like, being like, this, and then Seamus be like, well, no, it's more like this, and Tim is like, yeah, fair enough.
I agree with that. I love Seamus.
Goals.
Government encroachment on parental rights. Seniors, disabled.
Sorry, Lewis was pulling a Ron DeSantis there, talking about a parental rights bill.
Every single reserve
Maybe we need a parental rights in education bill. Though that'd be by province. The feds have blessedly no interference in education as far as I'm aware right now.
I mean,
they've
fortunately,
interfered in every other part of provincial jurisdiction, but education seems to be untouched for now.
That's honestly strange.
I am confused by that. If there is interference, it must be so old that it's just no one even knows it anymore unless you've looked it up.
I wouldn't trust public schools as far as I could throw them, though. Having gone to one. Although, when we went, it wasn't that bad.
No, I thought my public school experience was useless.
Well,
most of the courses were completely waste of time.
Useless is different than brainwashing, though. Because that's what it is now. Like, ours, my experience
Are you
in
suggesting
public
that places like, what is it, Birmingham, where like most of the kids identify as LGBT, are probably not grooming their kids?
Is that Birmingham?
I think I don't know, someplace in the UK.
Someplace in the UK. Although I was speaking to a coworker about certain schools in Ontario where the whole school is like made up of like one single immigrant group or something. I think you see that in the UK as well. Rocca says, my father's the person who gets all the papers, maps done for the government to look at and will get approval for that development. So he's the second in Oh, I see. Second in charge of that development. Oh yeah, no problem. Rocco autocorrect gets the best of us.
Yeah, especially when you're trying to get it into what I think was 200 character chat comments. So, and you're trying to like keep up with the live chat, so you don't want to type too slowly to make it like clear.
Luckily, our chat isn't moving too blindingly fast. I think it's a good speed.
It annoys me when you go to like some live streams and you're just seeing the chat and it's just a mile a minute. It's like how are you supposed to?
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess that's why YouTube has. What are they called? The money comments that last for ages?
Super chats.
Yeah. I'm not monetized. I don't get those choices.
Yeah.
Oh, my laptop died. Well, this is why we have two computers.
2 years separated from sporting and
Oh, Pierre's talking about the impacts of COVID measures.
Who, after being called a hero for 2 years,
I think some guy that is already what's happening. So, I think the Zooms, the Zoomy boys, the Zoomer gates, the Zoomer guys, I don't know. That one too long. I think they're already skewing more conservative because people tend to rebel against the status quo, and our young people, and our status quo is very liberal. And by liberal I mean politically liberal, not like ideologically, because no one in Canada is ideologically liberal in the traditional sense.
Rocco says he's very happy he's not in Ontario schooling. However, I'm very sorry for the kids today. Yeah, really. I'm sorry for parents today trying to figure out where they're going to put their kids.
My cousins are finishing high school right now, and oh boy, they both pay basically their entire... I don't think they mentioned anything to me about like some of the crazy things you hear about US or UK schools, but they're just completely worthless. Like, the education they're getting is not worth anything. They're not learning anything. They're not getting graded on anything. It's just there, and it's wasting their time.
I'm running to be the leader.
Which is honest, like, is almost as much of
I'm sorry. Sheree is just like, I'm running to be the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. You don't say.
You know what? That's good. It's a good thing that he's in the Conservative
he knows
leadership
where he
race.
is.
Yep.
He's got one on Biden.
It's an improvement.
And unite the country.
He's talking about uniting the party and uniting the country again, and I'm really afraid, given his track record, that he means adopt liberal policies into the conservative model, because you're not going to get liberal voters, dude. You are never going to get liberal voters, and that was Aaron O'Toole's problem, is that he tried to bring liberal voters that are never going to vote for a conservative.
He ironically lost more seats in urban areas than Scheer did. Scheer actually gained seats in urban areas. O'Toole lost seats in urban areas.
10 out of 10.
I'm not saying Scheer's a bastion, or Scheer's platform in 2019 was the bastion of conservatism, but it was definitely more conservative than O'Toole campaign ran. And O'Toole performed worse against a much more damaged Trudeau.
Rocca says he's watched you since the last federal election and was on the side to share his opinions on the subject. Hope I'm not far on my opinions. Do you recognize Rocco from your comments? It's been a while since he did the federal election.
Yeah, I get a lot of comments.
He loves seeing people's opinions, though,
It's
so
great.
never be nervous about that.
always share your opinion, even if your opinion was like radical socialist. I would still love to read it because there's a reason why you're watching my channel, and I would love to see why you're watching it. I'd like to see what your comments are, what your thoughts are, because the other thing to keep in mind, since my main shtick is I do polling analysis, and they are useful for interpreting the data. So even if you completely disagree with me on every single possible issue, I still love the comment.
It's interesting too because polling is very much for everybody's access, and it should be useful for everybody. It's not just useful for people from one political side. So polling videos especially should be open to viewers of any opinion.
For sure.
He says he's very happy sharing his opinion. We're happy that you're sharing opinion too, and
it's great.
It's important and it's interesting.
Every single comment is fantastic, except those like low energy trolls where people try to attack me. There was a lot of those when I first covered the U.S. election in 2020. There was a lot of low-energy trolls saying that I was bought and paid for by the Trump campaign. And it was like, honestly, if the Trump campaign wanted to pay me, I would have accepted it.
I would love Trump money. Do you imagine how much you could make?
With my, at the time, I was like 30 subscribers.
Hacksource asks, would Bernier and McKay have done better than Scheer and O'Toole in the election had they won the leadership?
I think McKay would have done better than O'Toole 100% just because McKay wouldn't have flip-flopped as hard as O'Toole did, and I think that's really disenchanted a lot of people.
It is hard to do as bad as O'Toole.
I don't think he would have won, but I think he would have done better. Bernier, I don't know if he could have won in 2019, but I think he would have won in 2021 as the leader of the Conservatives. I don't think he would have done worse than Scheer as well.
Rocco says he started chatting in your videos. Was the last video you've done on the Ontario election? He made a comment about when the NDP is falling in the polls.
Yes, I remember that.
Because they made a pact with the Liberals.
Those are great comments, and
he sends most of these comments to me as well, so I see them too. I hate the YouTube 200.
Yes.
Oh, it has a max character count. That's right. I completely forgot about
I wish
that.
I could change that, but I do not.
I don't think we can.
How.
I have been Lexie, the guest.
And I have been Chris, the main host of the channel.
And it's been great having you guys here for some of the debate.
We listened to a few comments from
we talked about them enough. It's fine.
Yeah. With that, though, I bid you all adieu, and I hope to see you on Sunday for the next Ontario update.
Yes, thank you. Have a good night.